Shana Tova to all of you. Shana Tova to your families. If they are not here, Shana Tova to the Jewish world. This past summer, I encountered an old friend. Actually, he recognized me before I was able to recognize him. It was a member from my first synagogue in Michigan. He told me that he remembered almost every joke that I use in my sermons. Then I said to him, "Do you remember the sermons?" He said, "No, just the jokes." So that's as far as I'm going to make jokes this morning, because the mood is not for jokes, but for gaining perspective on what is happening in Israel and how we should respond. We are fast approaching the anniversary of the one mark since October 7th of the war between Israel and its enemies. If you recall, at the funeral of Hirsch Goldberg Pauling, for whom we have said Kaddish for 30 days, his parents, John and Rachel, wore a piece of tape over their hearts with the number of days that had passed since October 7th, an expression of peoplehood, heartache, and solidarity. Because in their grief, they reminded us, and so many others, that we are still suffering. The war shows no sign of abating. In many respects, it is heating up, and it could be spinning out of control. Israel's war with Hamas, Hezbollah, and other Iranian proxies, and perhaps Iran, God forbid, itself, is an open-ended struggle on multiple fronts. We must remain strong. And in the words of Golda Meir, we cannot negotiate peace with someone who seeks to kill us. As long as hostages remain in captivity, as long as Israel's citizens are in danger, and as long as Jewish lives are at risk around the world, our attention and our defense is in the here and now and with Israel. I also insist that we acknowledge and work on behalf of the rights of Palestinians for self-determination. However, the existence of the State of Israel is not negotiable. The current wave of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism makes no allowance for any Jewish presence in the Middle East. And although Jews make up about 2% of the US population, anti-Semitic incidents comprise 15% of all hate crimes officially recorded. Israel must continue to exist. I am a Zionist. I love Israel. No explanations are needed. In the words of Golda Meir, on the question of to be or not to be, we should never depend upon someone else to live and to stay alive. So with the existence of the State of Israel, we don't have to ask permission from anybody or any nation on earth whether we should exist or not. We need an independent, unrestricted State of Israel, because without Israel, Jews will always have to ask other people for the right to exist. With Israel and in Israel, we do not have to ask anyone for permission to live. Famous rabbi who had a chance to meet in one of the Rabbinical Assembly conventions back in the 90s, Arthur Hertzberg, rabbi, intellect, he once observed, Israel is indeed the center of Jewish loyalty, not only as a cause to be supported, but as a place whose existence helps to make Jews more comfortable and secure in America and throughout the world. And Israel has done so much to inspire contemporary Jewish existence. Israel mobilizes our energies, reclaims the Jewish homeland, and enables the Jews to assert their historical role as sovereign and independent people. Unfortunately, America and the world continue to see anti-Semitism, particularly in our college campuses. Even here, our own Temple of Bethel, when we are trying to honor those who serve the IDF, we had protesters outside throwing eggs to the parked cars that were there. Because there is a percentage of America who doesn't want us alive. It does not depend on what Israel does with the Palestinians. It is simply hate. And that is why we have to remain strong in who we are, not give up our identity, know our support for Israel, regardless of any protesters' words or actions. Let us declare proudly that we are Jews, that we love Israel, and continue to love all our Israeli brothers and sisters who live there and defend our holy land. Israel exists to prevent genocide in that area of the world, and Israel exists to protect minorities who would not exist or would be discriminated against in many areas of the Arab world. Golda Meir puts it this way: Israel itself is the strongest guarantee against another Holocaust. And therefore, a contemporary synagogue is a house of prayer and a place that should help Jews identify as Jews, explore and wrestle with Jewish values and contemporary issues. So high on the list of those values is the love for Israel. And yet, Rabbinic Judaism took shape almost entirely outside of the land of Israel. But it is misleading and wrong to call Judaism anything other than a land-centered faith. If you read the Torah portion of today, and before we get to this Torah portion, from God's first call to Abraham, to the land I will show you, to our arrival in 1948 to the Promised Land, through the first and second Commonwealth, through exile, in the words of our prayers, the direction in which we pray, the rituals we observe, the aspirations we hold, our eyes have always been turned towards Israel, towards Zion. We can argue or raise objections whether we are a faith, a people, a culture. But to me, that discussion is a distraction. Israel is a proudly yet imperfect state that, just like any other nations, falls short of its values and principles. By giving the choice of a sovereign and imperfect Israel, or the moral perfection of being an exile victim, I think, and I prefer, the former over the latter. And so should you. Israel is the most outstanding achievement of the Jewish people in the past century. And to be a Jew means to understand that Israel is critical, a critical component of being Jewish. And Israel is at war and will probably remain in conflict for some time in the future. So we must learn more about Israel, its history, its traditions, to participate in discussions, to teach our children, to have a better understanding of the facts, and have an independent opinion of what goes on there today. We thank many of our members who went to Israel, who visited those traumatized by the recent fighting and terrorist attacks. They volunteered. They gave up their time and dedication and expertise, and we thank them. It wasn't a small number of our members who visited Israel, and we're very proud of them. Even some of us have family members who were soldiers in Gaza this year. We collectively express our gratitude to those leaders and soldiers upon whom the safety of Israel depends, and we express our deepest sympathies to the families who have lost friends and families and soldiers throughout the conflict. To not be actively engaged with securing the future of a democratic Jewish state is to abdicate the responsibility of what it means to be a Jew. And we know the story when Israel was in Gaza, where Israel left Gaza in 2005, left behind a population that could have built a peaceful and prosperous country. Instead, in a short period, they started sending missiles against Israel. And that's not right. It's like your neighbor were to go across your backyard and drop the entire garbage in your property. I mean, one time may be fine. Two, I'm not sure. The third time, you're going to say you just have to stop doing that. Israel is being accused as being an apartheid state. Really? How many black doctors were in Johannesburg during apartheid? How many black judges were there in court systems? How many black members of parliament were there in South Africa? None. Israel had Israeli Arab Caleb Kabub on the Supreme Court. Many of the doctors in hospitals are Arab Israelis. The previous Israel government had a head of the largest Arab party as a member of the cabinet. How apartheid does that sound to you? From the river to the sea, divisive, hateful statement, anti-Semitic statement calling for genocide. And when a Jew says that, Gewalt, I don't know what to say. Actually, I scratched what I said. All I can say to them is that after they come for me, they will not remember what you chanted, and they will be too busy taking you away as well. In the same venue, when we criticize Israel, let Israelis be responsible of who they choose to be prime minister. Right or wrong, left or right. If you want only Americans to be responsible of choosing our next president. And so, on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, my message to you is for the future generations. For those who read Torah today and those who are looking up saying, one day I will read Torah from the Bima. And the message is, do not abandon the religion that is yours by birth, the faith of your parents and ancestors. Judaism and Israel in particular is your inheritance. Its people are your people. And for you to get there with that feeling, you need education. Because Judaism requires a lifetime exploration, search, to learn Hebrew, to make time to study the Jewish sources, to add a new mitzvah, to travel to Israel. And this reminds me of a story of a lady that travels to Israel. And upon her return, a friend of her asked her, so tell me in one word, how was your trip? And she says, good. So now tell me in 2 words, how was it? Not good. Our history as Jews, we start exactly in the opposite situation. For us, things starts badly and turn for the better. And that is the perspective I want to leave you with today. A perspective, a sense of history. We hear from the Haggadah on Passover, Matchil begenut umesayem b'shevach. What starts bad, you have to make it good. So on Passover, for example, we take slavery, which is a bad thing, and we turn it into freedom, of being liberated and free, which is a good thing. And that is true not just in the liturgy of Passover, but in all the other things as well. For example, when the Jews were exiled from Israel and sent to Babylonia, Iraq, Iran, that area, the Persian, that area. What did they do in that time of agony for 36 years? They created and wrote the Babylonian Talmud, a founding document of Rabbinic Judaism. On Yom Kippur, we read about the martyrdom of the sages and we say El Eskera. And we remember Rabbi Akiva, who was tortured before he died. And what did he do? He recited the Shema and said, I never understood the meaning of Bechol Lebavcha, Bechol Nafshecha, Bechol Nafshecha, Bechol Meodecha. I never understood the meaning of that. The meaning with your whole heart, with your whole heart, and with your whole might. It means that even if your life is taken, you should still praise God. But that event of Rabbi Akiva was taken from that story and turned into the Shema at one's last prayer. So before we die, we say Shema Israel. Sometimes Rabbi has to say the Shema because the person cannot say it. So Rabbi Akiva has left something of importance. He has left a legacy, something positive, powerful out of that terrible persecution. The prophet Jeremiah, who lived in the time of the destruction of the first temple, 650 to 570 BC. Also, he was called the weeping prophet because his entire life was about destruction and crying about it. He lived around the time of the destruction of the first temple, as I said. What's a major catastrophe? The temple that was dreamed by David was constructed by Solomon, had been stood for 500 years. When it was destroyed, it was inconceivable. Judaism will end. And Jeremiah says to the Israelites, it will be destroyed. והשבעתי מערי יהודה ומחוצות ירושלים כל ששון וכל שמחה כל חתן וכל כלה כי לחורבה תהיה הארץ. I will silence in the towns of Judah, on the streets of Jerusalem, the sound of mirth and gladness, the voice of bridegroom and bride, for the whole land shall fall to ruin. When was the last time you were at the Jewish wedding? When was the last time you were at the Jewish wedding when you heard the words, you hear the words, Kol sason ve'kol simcha, kol chatan ve'kol kala, od yeshama be'ari Yehuda bechutzot Yerushalayim, kol sason ve'kol simcha, kol chatan ve'kol kala. Yet again, there shall be heard in the cities of Judah and the cities of Jerusalem the voice of joy and the voice of gladness and the voice of bridegroom and the voice of bride. Because the Jewish people take catastrophe and turn it into joy. Ezekiel, the prophet on the Haftarah of the 7th day of Passover, it is known for his vision of the dry bones at Samot Yeveshot. And he says there in the Haftarah, Hine omrim yavshu atzmotenu be'avda tikvatenu nigzarnu lanu. Our bones are dried up, our hope is gone, we are doomed. And I'm sure that in the Hebrew you recognize the sentence. Ot lo avda tikvatenu, in the national anthem of Israel, we have not lost our hope. Indeed, we haven't lost it even today. So how was your trip? In 2 words, not good. In 1 word, good. Throughout history, we have consistently turned dark into light, catastrophe into hope, sadness into joy. We have done this before. We have been transformative, slavery into freedom. We are in the season of renewal, and we should show resilience. Right now, we are navigating through grief. We should show our strength. You want to know and understand what happens in Israel? Help Israel. Israel struggles with how to prosecute the war. Israel struggles how to secure peace, how to maintain the country's international standing, and address its internal divisions. We must remember that we have seen this before. We have done the turn before, and we will do it again. We must accept our fate as the Jewish people. There's no other country for us rather than Israel. As an Israeli commented, it is thrilling to accompany the soldiers who are regaining the ability to walk, to use their hands and arms to pick up the newborn babies. As they heal, we shall heal. As they heal, I feel more confident day by day that our future will be better. May this year that end with its curses. Tichle shana v'kerelotea, tachil shana v'chrotea. But the new year should begin blessings. We know how to turn what is terrible and unpleasant into what is good and dignifying. We have done it before. It is not easy or quick. Our purpose is clear. Our destiny is revealed. It is God's will. And may our wisdom and our faith